If you've ever thought you understood teenagers, you don't know Holden Caulfield. This isn't a sweet coming-of-age tale. It's a raw, rebellious confession from a boy who's been kicked out of yet another school, wandering the streets of New York with nothing but his cynicism and a craving for something real. No rules, no filters, just the truth, messy, dangerous, and impossible to forget. Once you hear Holden speak, you can't unhear him, and you might never see the world the same way again.
Hello, everyone. Hi, all, and welcome to Book Podcast Zone. I'm Emma, your guide through the wonderfully winding paths of knowledge and imagination.
And I'm John. Let's unpack this. Our mission today is a deep dive into J.D. Salinger's, well, timeless novel, The Catcher in the Rye.
Can't get much more classic than that.
Right. And we're focusing on its enduring themes, but through a really interesting kind of innovative lens, a new audiobook analysis. We've got this fantastic source for our journey today. It's an analytical deep dive called Catching Innocence, a journey through Salinger's Rye.
Right. I've listened to parts of it. It's really quite detailed.
It is. It gives this incredibly detailed chapter-by-chapter breakdown of the novel. And what's great is how it expertly weaves in all this rich historical context from post-World War II America.
Especially the 1950s, right? That specific cultural moment.
Exactly. It zeroes in on that nuanced cultural landscape. So our goal really is to extract the most important nuggets of knowledge from this source material. We want to truly understand the emotional currents of Holden Caulfield's pretty tumultuous journey.
Yeah, it's definitely tumultuous.
And see how his struggles, with that profound alienation, the painful, almost inevitable loss of innocence, and his, visceral rebellion against what he calls phoniness, how all that resonates even today.
It really does, doesn't it? The themes hold up remarkably well.
They do. So by the end of this deep dive, you're going to walk away with, hopefully, a truly profound understanding of why this book is still such a cornerstone of American literature, why it keeps showing up on syllabi, and how it just perfectly captured the anxieties bubbling beneath that seemingly shiny, prosperous, and, well, let's face it, conformist facade of 1950s America.
That shiny surface.
Yeah.
It's a powerful exploration, isn't it? Youth, disillusionment, and that relentless, often really frustrating search for truth in a world that, at least to Holden, feels deeply, profoundly phony.
Yeah, and what's truly fascinating here, and what that audiobook analysis you mentioned really illuminates, is how Salinger himself, he was a veteran, right?
Right.
Haunted by his wartime experiences.
Right.
And he poured that raw sense of disillusionment, that really distinctive voice, straight into Holden, the narrator of Catching Innocence. They capture that perfectly, that raw confessional style.
That feels so immediate.
Incredibly personal, immediate, like Holden is whispering right into your ear, makes his angst just palpable.
Yeah. So, this deep dive, we're going to thoroughly explore how Holden's individual angst. It isn't just some personal quirk, it's actually a powerful mirror reflecting those broader societal tensions of the 1950s.
Like what specifically?
Well, you've got the relentless push for conformity we mentioned, that underlying Cold War paranoia sort of simmering beneath everything, making people suspicious, leading to these stifling social norms.
Right, keeping up appearances.
Exactly. And then you see the early, almost unarticulated stirrings of youth pushing back against those rigid expectations, those predetermined life paths. The whole finish school, get a job, get married track.
Yeah, the game he talks about.
Precisely. So we'll delve into not just what happens to Holden on this chaotic journey, but why it matters so profoundly. We'll connect his very personal internal struggles to that bigger picture of American identity and, well, that universal, often painful experience of growing up. Navigating a world that doesn't always make sense.
Makes perfect sense. A crucial look at how individual experience can really reflect, maybe even predict, those broader societal shifts.
Couldn't agree more.
All right, let's jump right into part one then. The Pencey Prep, Escape Alienation, and the Phony World. This covers those pivotal opening chapters 1 through 7. This is where we first meet Holden, get inside his head, and really begin to understand the unique, often frustrating lens through which he sees everything.
Yeah, the foundation for everything that follows.
So chapter 1, The Outlier at Pencey Prep. It just throws us headfirst into Holden's distinctive voice, doesn't it?
Instantly recognizable.
He introduces himself from what he calls a quiet recovery spot. Bit vague, but it immediately sets this tone of reflection, right? A sense of removal from the very world he's about to describe.
That distance is there from the first sentence.
And what's striking is he completely skips the usual backstory, the David Copperfield kind of crap, as he calls it.
Yeah, no long origin story here.
Drops us straight into his chaotic present. He's been expelled from Pencey Prep. Significantly, it's his fourth school, just before Christmas break.
Yeah, not exactly a model student.
And instead of joining the cheering crowd at the big annual football game, the ultimate symbol of school spirit, conformity.
The very definition of rah-rah phoniness for him.
Exactly. He's literally up on this lonely hill, Thompson Hill, observing what he sees as phony school spirit, the ads in the program. He's observing it all from a distance.
Physically apart, emotionally apart, philosophically apart. It's such a perfect visual metaphor for his whole state of being.
Totally. And he starts his story by recounting his decision to say this, well, somewhat reluctant goodbye to his history teacher, Mr. Spencer, which already sets the stage for that pervasive frustration with adult hypocrisy, the insincerity he sees everywhere.
You've hit on such a crucial point about his initial stance there. This opening absolutely, undeniably establishes Holden's deep-seated alienation from the very first page. He's not just physically separated on that hill.
Right.
He's emotionally and philosophically isolated from, well, pretty much everyone, observing what he sees as this performative, artificial enthusiasm all around him.
Yeah, the performance is key.
And his repeated use of that word, phony, applied to the school's ads, its traditions, the general spirit, it isn't just casual teen slang. It's a direct, almost philosophical rejection of that pervasive conformist vibe of 1950s America.
You really feel that rejection.
You do, because in that era, social cohesion, fitting in, presenting that unblemished image, it wasn't just valued, it was almost culturally demanded. Think about the idealized image of suburban life back then.
Oh, yeah. The perfect families on TV, the ads.
Exactly. The perfect families, the perfect lawns, the shiny new consumer goods pushed relentlessly by media. Like, you open up Life magazine or turn on one of those new TV sets and you see ads for, I don't know, the latest Frigidaire refrigerator or a gleaming Ford Fairlane.
Right, promising this perfect American life.
This almost utopian version of American success and domestic bliss. Holden instinctively sees right through that manufactured image and calls it phony, even in the seemingly innocent world of his prep school.
Even there, yeah.
And that audiobook analysis you mentioned, the way the narrator delivers phony with that slight sneer, it really brings home the contempt in his voice.
It really does.
Salinger himself, a product of that post-WWII world, he just profoundly captures how the economic boom and that outward prosperity, it often couldn't, and indeed didn't, mask the underlying emotional voids, that pervasive sense of inauthenticity that so many Americans, especially young people, were starting to feel.
That's a fascinating connection. And that dynamic, that tension, it continues, maybe even intensifies, with his visit to Mr. Spencer in Chapter 2, The Game of Life and Generational Clashes.
Oh, absolutely.
This encounter just immediately highlights Holden's profound frustration with what he sees as adult hypocrisy and that huge, almost unbridgeable communication gap between generations.
It's painful to read, almost.
It is. His uncomfortable encounter with Mr. Spencer, who's sick, frail, lecturing him from his sickbed. So awkward. Yeah. Spencer reads Holden's terrible history essay aloud.
Ugh, the essay.
Complete with Holden's casual, almost flippant note at the bottom, trying to explain why he failed. It's deeply embarrassing, humiliating even, for Holden, who's trying to keep some dignity while being basically scolded.
And that, I think, is precisely the point where Holden's disengagement, his unique coping mechanisms really come into focus. While Mr. Spencer, with all his well-meaning but maybe misguided intentions, lectures Holden about playing the game of life.
That classic 1950s advice.
The ultimate advice for success back then. While Spencer's doing that, Holden's mind just conspicuously drifts off to these utterly random yet deeply symbolic thoughts. Like the Central Park ducks. Where do they go in winter?
Right. It seems so random, but it's not just quirky.
Not at all. It profoundly illustrates his complete disengagement from adult advice that feels empty, patronizing, totally irrelevant to his internal turmoil. He ends up selling a white lie to escape the room.
A recurring theme, the lying.
Exactly, which raises an important question for us, doesn't it? Is Mr. Spencer genuinely trying to help, maybe in the only way he knows how within those rigid social norms? Or is his approach so rooted in that 1950s emphasis on playing the game for stability, for success, just utterly incomprehensible to Holden?
It feels like they're speaking different languages.
Completely, and it reflects that immense, almost suffocating pressure on young men back then to conform to a specific path. Finish school, go to college, get a good corporate job, start a family, contribute to the booming economy.
The whole package deal.
The whole package. That concept of the game in post-war America, it meant everything from climbing the corporate ladder, showing loyalty, to achieving that quintessential American dream of suburban prosperity. The house, the car, the 2.5 kids.
And Holden's perspective, even just shown through his total disinterest, fundamentally challenges that traditional view. He's clearly looking for something more, something authentic, meaningful, not just fitting into a slot.
Precisely. And the audiobook narrator nails that the almost bored, flat tone when delivering Holden's internal thoughts during Spencer's lecture. It emphasizes that detachment perfectly.
You really feel him zoning out. Then we get to Chapter 3, Forced Proximity and Growing Annoyances. Holden's back in his dorm room, feeling increasingly restless, trapped almost.
The walls are closing in.
And we immediately see his self-confessed mastery of lying. He admits he's good at it, almost proud of it in a weird way.
A skill he uses constantly.
And he has to endure his incredibly gross and intrusive neighbor, Allie. You know, the pimples, the bad hygiene, always barging in.
Yeah, quite the character. Always clipping his toenails over the floor.
Yes. And then his popular, superficially handsome roommate, Stradlater, bursts in. Polished exterior, but Holden tells us he's secretly a total slob. Secret slob.
Right, the image versus reality again.
These close-quarter encounters, this forced proximity, it just adds to Holden's ever-growing list of annoyances, really amplifying his sense of isolation and disgust. Even when he's surrounded by people, he can't escape the phoniness, even in his own room.
These encounters are absolutely crucial. They amplify his already pervasive sense of isolation, even in what should be a communal living space. His cynicism visibly deepens with each interaction. He meticulously judges everyone around him, finding them irritating, shallow, and, of course, phony. It's almost like the closer he is physically to people, the more glaring their perceived imperfections and inauthenticity become.
That's a great point.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the dynamic within these elite boarding schools, it often served as a microcosm reflecting those broader social hierarchies, those strict expectations for young men in post-war society.
Like a training ground.
In a way, yeah. Image, superficial success, conforming to a certain ideal of masculinity. Think of that man in the gray flannel suit archetype that was emerging. It was paramount. These schools were explicitly designed to mold young men into future leaders who would uphold the existing norms.
And Holden's resisting that mold.
Visibly resisting it from the outset, finding the very fabric of it inherently phony. The narrator's voice in the audiobook captures that palpable tension in these dorm scenes, the way Holden's exasperation just builds and builds.
You can feel it. Then Chapter 4, Jane Gallagher and the Fear of Corruption, introduces this really pivotal emotional trigger for Holden. It delves right into his deepest vulnerabilities.
Jane, yes, so important.
Stradlater's casual mention of his date with Jane Gallagher immediately makes Holden deeply uneasy. You quickly sense there's a deeper, almost sacred connection there, a shared history, and this potent fear of her being corrupted by someone like Stradlater.
Who Holden sees as the ultimate phony operator.
It's exactly. But despite his profound discomfort, his disdain for Stradlater, he reluctantly agrees to ghostwrite Stradlater's English paper for him. Which is kind of an interesting contradiction, isn't it, given his hatred of phoniness?
It is, but maybe it's his way of trying to control the situation or stay connected to Jane indirectly. Or maybe it just shows his own inconsistencies.
Could be.
But that chapter just crackles with unspoken jealousy and, more profoundly, this fierce, almost desperate protectiveness. Holden clearly idealizes Jane Gallagher.
Totally puts her on a pedestal.
Completely. His acute anxiety about her well-being, her purity, it underscores his deep-seated fear of corruption and, critically, that irretrievable loss of innocence. He sees her as this pure, innocent figure, this rare gem uniquely vulnerable to the phoniness of the adult world, especially embodied by someone like Stradlater.
He wants to shield her.
Desperately. And what's truly fascinating here, especially thinking about the 1950s, is how this reflects the era's dating culture. Casual encounters, particularly for young women, could mask deeper anxieties about morality, reputation, the perceived dangers of a changing social landscape.
Right, the pressure to be a nice girl.
Immense pressure. And for young men, an often unspoken but deeply ingrained code about how they interacted with those nice girls. Holden desperately wants to preserve Jane's purity, shield her from the phony, potentially corrupting adult world he hates. The audiobook's narrator in these moments shifts to a more introspective, almost tender tone. It lets us feel the depth of Holden's concern for Jane, revealing that softer side beneath the cynical shell.
Yeah, you see the vulnerability there. And then comes chapter 5, Allie's myth and the idealization of innocence. For so many readers, this is just absolutely heartbreaking, undeniably one of the most powerful moments.
Agreed. It's unforgettable.
After a kind of bland, unsatisfying night out, Holden finally sits down to write that essay for Stradlater. But instead of describing a room or a house, like the assignment asked,
He writes about the mitt.
he writes about his late brother Allie's baseball mitt. The mitt, he describes it, is uniquely etched with poems written in green ink. This memory is just profoundly poignant. It immediately reveals Allie as this brilliant, kind, utterly uncorrupted kid whom Holden completely idolizes. It seemed like the one truly pure thing he holds on to.
This is more than just pivotal. It's the pivotal moment diving into Holden's profound, unresolved grief and his absolute, almost sacred idealization of innocence. Allie, tragically untouched by the adult world and its phoniness because he died young from leukemia.
Yeah.
He represents everything pure, brilliant, good to Holden. He's the stark, perfect contrast to Holden's cynical outer shell, a memory that, for Holden, remains untainted. Allie's memory is a sanctuary, a pristine mental space where the world still makes sense, isn't polluted by adult hypocrisy.
A safe place.
Exactly. And this raises a deeply resonant question, doesn't it? In post-WWII America, many families were dealing with immense, often silent, loss and trauma, not just from the war, but from illnesses, accidents, things that couldn't always be easily explained or overcome.
Yeah, grief was often very private.
Very private. Allie's death echoes that broader societal mourning, that lingering emotional void. Holden's almost obsessive inability to move past it speaks to the unaddressed grief, the emotional scars of the era. Processing profound loss was often a private, silent burden, not something openly discussed or therapeutically addressed.
Right.
The audiobook narrator's voice becomes noticeably softer, almost reverent, when Holden describes Allie's mitt. It creates this incredible intimacy, pulling the listener right into Holden's sorrow and his longing for that lost purity. It really brings Salinger's delicate prose to life in a way just reading it might not convey as strongly.
You feel it so much more, and that profound, raw emotion from the Allie chapter, it spills directly, violently into chapter 6, betrayal and the brutality of the civilized world. Stradlater returns, and with this almost chilling casualness, just dismisses Holden's deeply personal, emotionally charged essay about Allie, because it wasn't about a room or a house.
Completely missing the point, or maybe deliberately ignoring it.
And then, to add insult to injury, Stradlater totally dodges Holden's increasingly desperate questions about his date with Jane. Just won't give him a straight answer.
Playing games.
This dismissiveness, the perceived evasion, it shatters Holden's already fragile sense of trust, ignites this visceral, violent response. It leads to a brutal brawl that leaves Holden bloody and just seething with unresolved anger.
Yeah, this explosion of raw, undirected anger highlights Holden's impulsive, almost desperate defense of what he sees as pure, meaningful, sacred. Stradlater's casual dismissal of something so personal, combined with the evasiveness about Jane, it just shatters Holden's already precarious trust.
He snaps.
He snaps. It's not just a fight, it's a desperate lashing out. Themes of betrayal and the surprising brutality lurking just beneath the surface of seemingly civilized settings come violently to the fore here.
Even in a prep school dorm.
Exactly. And if we connect this to the bigger picture again, Salinger's own profound PTSD from his harrowing wartime experiences likely informs this portrayal of hidden violence, those deep psychological scars that lingered beneath the veneer of suburban calm and prosperity in the 50s.
That makes sense.
The war showed Salinger the raw, uncivilized side of humanity. He imbues Holden with a similar, almost hypersensitive awareness of the brutality he perceives in everyday interactions, even among seemingly normal people. The audiobook narrator's voice here becomes harsher, quicker, reflecting Holden's escalating rage and the raw violence of the moment. It's a shocking reminder that violence isn't always overt. It can be emotional, dismissive, and just as damaging psychologically, especially to someone as sensitive as Holden.
Absolutely. After that utterly demoralizing brawl, we finally arrive at Chapter 7, the midnight escape breaking from phony institutions. Holden's nursing his wounds, physically and emotionally, sinking into this new low of loneliness in Ackley's cluttered room, of all places.
Hits rock bottom at Pencey.
and impulsively decides he just can't stand another moment there. He flees the school in the dead of night, makes this dramatic, almost cinematic exit yelling, "Sleep tight, ya morons," as he dashes out the door. It's a definitive break.
This dramatic, impulsive escape isn't merely running away from a school. It symbolizes his definitive break from institutions he deems phony, suffocating, utterly devoid of genuine meaning.
He's rejecting the whole system.
Completely. It's an adventurous, desperate act of rebellion against a system he feels is designed to force conformity and stifle individuality. Historically, this captures that deep-seated restlessness, that unspoken dissatisfaction already brewing among youth in the 1950s, a subtle undercurrent that clearly foreshadows the much larger counterculture movements of the next decade.
Like the seeds were being planted.
Exactly. Think about iconic films from the era, like Rebel Without a Cause with James Dean, released just a few years after Catcher in 1955. These stories tapped into a growing sentiment among teenagers who felt profoundly misunderstood, stifled by rigid parental expectations, boxed in by a society that felt predetermined.
Yeah, that feeling of being trapped.
Holden's Flight is an early, powerful, raw literary articulation of this emerging concept of teenage rebellion, a distinct phenomenon from previous generations. Young people were starting to question established norms, seeking their own identities outside traditional institutions like schools, churches, even the family unit.
He's not just leaving Pencey.
He's attempting to escape an entire way of life, a whole worldview that he finds unbearable. The quickening pace of the narration in the audiobook during this chapter perfectly conveys that impulsive, almost breathless regency of Holden's escape.
It really pulls you along with him. Okay, before we follow Holden into the chaotic streets of New York City, we'd love for you to hit that like button if you're finding this interesting. Subscribe to Book Podcast Zone for more deep dives like this, and maybe share it with anyone else who loves a good story and digging into the analysis. Your support really helps us keep exploring these incredible literary worlds.
It really does.
Now back to Holden. He's headed for the big city.
Ready or not?
We pick up Holden's story in part 2, New York City and the Search for Connection, covering chapters 8 through 14. He's on his own now, in this sprawling, overwhelming landscape of the city, desperately searching for something, anything, real.
The concrete jungle.
So, chapter 8, The Art of Deception on the Train. Holden's on the train heading to New York, and almost immediately, he effortlessly spins this elaborate web of lies to a classmate's mother, Mrs. Morrow.
Yeah, the Ernest-Morrow interaction.
Right. He paints her son, Ernest, whom he secretly despises, as a total phony.
Thinks he's the biggest bastard at Pencey.
Exactly. But he tells her he's this star student, sensitive, popular, a really great guy. It's almost second nature to him, this fabric of untruths, despite his constant railing against phoniness in others.
It's fascinating, isn't it? This seemingly casual deception on the train is actually incredibly revealing. It highlights Holden's natural, almost reflexive ability to mask the truth, using fabrications not just casually, but as a deeply ingrained coping mechanism in a world he finds so profoundly insincere.
So he's kind of mirroring the phoniness he hates.
In a way, absolutely. It's a mirror of the very thing he condemns. Themes of duplicity, maintaining ignorances, they thrive here. And it reflects the era's pervasive emphasis on presenting a certain image, where what you showed the world was often considered more important than the underlying reality.
Keeping up appearances.
Exactly. And this was acutely heightened by the Cold War suspicions of the 1950s. Trust was often questioned. People were encouraged, almost expected, to maintain a perfect facade, even among neighbors. Think about the idealized American family in ads and TV shows.
The perfect smiles. The perfect house.
The pristine suburban lawn, the perfect smiles and family photos, all part of that societal expectation to present an unblemished image, even if it meant hiding internal struggles or imperfections. Holden, in his own strange way, is paradoxically mirroring this societal norm of inauthenticity, even as he despises it. He's a product of the very phony world he's railing against.
That's a really sharp observation.
And the audiobook narrator's tone shifts subtly here in almost glib, charming inflection, makes Holden's effortless lying unsettlingly convincing.
After that train ride, chapter 9, Urban Isolation and Gritty Realities in the Hotel, plunges Holden into the anonymity of New York. He checks into this rather seedy hotel, the Edmond.
Not exactly the Plaza?
Definitely not. His initial observations from his window are kind of voyeuristic, focusing on the quirky, sometimes disturbing antics of other guests in rooms across the way.
Yeah, the cross-dresser, the couple spinning drinks.
Right. Then, impulsively, he tries to call a woman, Faith Cavendish, supposedly known for being available for drinks, but he backs out almost immediately, showing his deep ambivalence towards intimacy and connection.
He wants it, but he's terrified of it.
Exactly. And then the night takes a decidedly darker, more disturbing turn with that raw, exploitative encounter involving the prostitute, Sunny, and her aggressive pimp, Maurice.
Ugh, Maurice.
It's a stark, uncomfortable introduction to the city's underbelly.
This gritty encounter just dramatically amps up the drama of urban isolation. It paints a stark, unromanticized picture of the exploitation. The darker currents often present in booming post-war cities.
Yeah, New York wasn't all glamour.
Definitely not. It was a hub of economic activity, cultural innovation, sure, but it also had its undeniable underbelly, its shadows, its hidden vulnerabilities. This encounter provides a jarring view of vulnerability and predatory behavior lurking beneath the big city lights. A harsh contrast to those idealized visions of urban prosperity dominating popular culture.
It feels like a slap in the face for Holden.
It really does, and it raises an important question. How does this traumatic encounter fundamentally challenge Holden's and maybe the broader 1950s societal naive, sheltered understanding of adult life? Sexuality, the transactional nature of human interaction in certain environments.
Yeah, it's a long way from Pencey Prep.
A very long way. For a generation raised with strict moral codes, often very limited open discussion about sex, exploitation, urban poverty, this kind of experience would have been deeply shocking, disorienting, traumatizing. It forces Holden and us to confront a reality far grittier, far more dangerous than the sanitized world he was taught to expect. The audiobook narrator's voice drops here almost to a whisper, conveying Holden's confusion and fear.
It's really effective. After that unsettling, frankly traumatic experience in Chapter 10, Superficiality in the Nightlife, Holden heads down to the hotel lounge, the lavender room, trying to find some distraction, some connection.
Looking for anything, really.
He flirts somewhat clumsily with these three older women, tourists from Seattle, dancing and chatting, trying to engage. But despite being surrounded by people, by activity, he ultimately ends up feeling even more alone, more isolated than before.
The connection just isn't there.
The superficiality he despises seems to follow him everywhere. He even lies about his age again.
His failed attempts at genuine connection here just underscore that profound alienation he feels, even when actively trying to engage within a crowd, which should offer some sense of belonging, right?
You'd think so.
But this scene perfectly captures the superficiality of many social scenes in the 1950s, where outward fun, sticking to social rituals, that sense of belonging, often masked underlying emptiness. A distinct lack of true intimacy.
Like going through the motions.
Exactly. People would gather at cocktail parties, clubs, social events, engaging in polite, often vapid conversation, all primarily designed to maintain appearances and social status, not to foster deep, meaningful connections. Holden's experience is a biting microcosm of that broader societal trend. Shows just how difficult it was for a sensitive soul to forge authentic relationships in an era prioritizing surface-level pleasantries over genuine emotional exchange. The audiobook highlights the hollow ring in Holden's internal monologue here, a stark contrast to the supposedly upbeat music of the lounge.
You feel that emptiness. And in Chapter 11, Jane Memories and the Longing for Genuine Bonds, we get this brief but crucial respite from the harsh city realities. Memories of Jane Gallagher flood back to Holden.
Back to Jane again, his touchstone.
He vividly recalls their sweet summer days together playing checkers, her troubled home life with her alcoholic stepfather. It clearly stirs Holden's protective instincts once more. Reminds us of his softer, more vulnerable side, his capacity for deep care.
This reflective pause deepens our understanding of Holden's profound, almost desperate longing for authentic, untainted bonds, a yearning that constantly clashes with his ingrained cynicism and the pervasive superficiality he keeps encountering.
It's like Jane represents everything the city isn't.
Precisely. Historically, these memories also subtly hint at those often hidden domestic issues, the unspoken anxieties beneath the seemingly pristine surface of the perfect post-war family ideal.
Right. Not every home was like, leave it to Beaver.
Far from it. While media and ads tirelessly presented images of happy, stable, nuclear homes, the reality for many families, including like Jane's, was far more complex, often involving unseen struggles, emotional neglect, dysfunctional dynamics. Jane's vulnerability, her unspoken trauma, resonates deeply with Holden, highlights his almost desperate need for genuine connection and his passionate desire to protect what little innocence he believes still exists.
It shows there's more to him than just cynicism.
Absolutely. Beneath all the anger, judgment, sarcasm, there's a deeply empathetic, even fragile core. The audiobook narrator's voice becomes notably softer, almost wistful, as Holden recounts these treasured memories, adding another layer of intimacy to his feelings for Jane.
Moving into Chapter 12, the absurdity of the search for truth, Holden's cabbing through the strangely empty streets of New York, seemingly obsessed with this mundane yet profoundly symbolic question.
The ducks.
The ducks. He repeatedly quizzes the cab driver, Horowitz, about where the Central Park ducks go in the winter, getting nothing but snappy, annoyed replies.
Horowitz is having none of it. Fish, maybe, but ducks, no clue.
Then he tries to visit Ernie's nightclub in Greenwich Village, but he's quickly driven out by what he perceives as phony chatter, Ernie's affected piano playing, and just generally insincere interactions.
Yeah, the whole atmosphere feels fake to him. The sheer absurdity of his persistent quest for genuine, meaningful talk amidst a world of constant, meaningless chatter builds this wonderful, almost tragic comic tension. His relentless questioning of the cab driver about the ducks isn't just a random fixation.
This feels like more, yeah.
It's a powerful, almost desperate metaphor for his underlying search for deeper meaning, for what happens to innocence, to beauty when things get cold, disappear, inevitably change. He's looking for answers about resilience, survival, how things endure or don't in a harsh, uncaring world.
Oh, there you go.
Exactly. And this persistent questioning also powerfully echoes the widespread mistrust and guardedness in everyday interactions during the Cold War era. People were often careful what they said, suspicious of strangers, focused on maintaining that facade of normalcy. Holden's genuine, almost childlike curiosity about something seemingly trivial is repeatedly met with the dismissive, superficial interaction that was a hallmark of the era's public discourse. He's searching for profound, existential truth in a world offering only surface-level answers. The audiobook narrator's increasing frustration, then Holden's dejected sigh in this chapter, particularly poignant.
You feel his frustration. In Chapter 13, Internal Conflict and Failed Adult Encounters, walking back to his hotel, Holden daydreams about toughness, imagines himself confronting someone who stole his gloves, projecting this image of being strong, worldly, unshakable.
Playing the tough guy in his head.
But the reality is quite different. He succumbs to profound loneliness and accepts Maurice, the elevator operator's offer to send up a prostitute, Sunny, only to find he's utterly incapable of following through with the encounter. He just wants to talk, highlighting his profound discomfort with adult sexuality, physical intimacy, and really his own burgeoning adulthood.
The awkward regret and profound confusion surrounding this encounter dramatically heighten Holden's internal conflict over navigating adulthood and its complexities, particularly regarding sexuality and genuine intimacy.
He seems so lost.
Completely. And this situation ties directly into the strict taboos and deeply repressed discussions around sex and maturity in the 1950s. Society often presented a very sanitized, often unrealistic, certainly limited view of intimacy, especially for young people.
Yeah, things weren't openly discussed.
Virtually non-existent public conversations about sexuality, often relegated to hushed whispers, moralistic pronouncements, clinical terms, creating an environment where young people like Holden were left to navigate their burgeoning desires and confusions largely on their own. This made Holden's internal struggle, his confusion, his discomfort, his inability to reconcile desire with his emotional state, acutely relevant to the era's repressed discussions. He's caught painfully between societal expectations and his own genuine but conflicted feelings, leading to profound shame, guilt, increasing confusion. The audiobook narrator's internal, almost panicky dialogue during this scene is a masterclass in conveying Holden's acute discomfort.
It really is palpable. This intense internal struggle and discomfort then erupts violently in Chapter 14, Grief, Phony Toughness, and a Visceral Punch.
The confrontation with Maurice.
Right. Smoking in bed, Holden mentally chats with his ghostly brother Allie, this brief, tender moment of solace connecting to the one pure thing in his life.
His only real confidant, in a way.
But then the pimp, Maurice, and Sunny the prostitute return, demanding more money. It quickly escalates into this brutal, violent shakedown where Holden, despite his earlier tough guy fantasies, gets viciously punched by Maurice.
Yeah, the reality of violence is very different from his fantasies.
His movie-fueled revenge fantasies afterwards.
Yeah.
Imagining himself plugging Maurice with an automatic, though darkly humorous, add this pathetic, almost childlike layer to his despair, highlighting his inability to cope with real-world violence and his own powerlessness.
This visceral, brutal encounter underscores the gripping, lingering power of grief and Holden's almost desperate reliance on a phony toughness, a bravado that just crumbles under real pressure, revealing his profound vulnerability.
It's all talk.
It is, and this phony toughness, we can infer, is often rooted in his own unaddressed trauma, maybe not directly his own war trauma, but certainly echoing the collective trauma of a nation emerging from World War II.
Right.
Many young men returning were expected to just get over it, resume normal life.
Right, just be strong.
But the psychological scars were profound, often unacknowledged in a society valuing stoicism. For Holden, this moment punches the listener right in the gut, viscerally revealing the raw emotional pain, vulnerability, sheer helplessness beneath his detached, cynical facade. His subsequent revenge fantasies, drawn directly from Hollywood movies, are a desperate, almost childlike attempt to regain control and dignity where he feels utterly powerless and violated. It's a stark reminder of how young and unprepared he truly is, despite his valiant yet failed attempts to navigate the adult world. The raw, guttural emotion conveyed by the narrator during this fight scene in the audiobook leaves a lasting impact.
It really does. Wow. We've just covered some incredibly intense, frankly heartbreaking moments in Holden's journey through New York. If you're finding this deep dive as compelling as we are, and we truly hope you are, please take just a moment to like this episode, subscribe to Book Podcast Eat Zone for more updates, and share this deep dive with your friends and fellow book enthusiasts. Your engagement truly helps us keep exploring these incredible worlds and bringing them to you with this level of detail.
Please do. It makes a difference.
Let's now move into part 3, Seeking Solace and Growing Despair, covering chapters 15 through 20. Holden is still grappling with the harsh realities of New York, but also desperately seeking and occasionally finding these fleeting moments of peace, connection, and maybe understanding amidst all the chaos.
Glimmers of hope, maybe?
Maybe. Chapter 15, Fleeting Connections and Simple Goodness, sees Holden trying, perhaps half-heartedly, to pick himself up after the brutal previous night with Maurice. He calls and sets a somewhat conventional date with Sally Hayes, an old acquaintance. Seems like a step towards normalcy, maybe?
Trying to play the game, perhaps?
Perhaps. But then, almost unexpectedly, he has this surprisingly warm and truly genuine interaction with 2 kind nuns over breakfast at Grand Central Station. They talked about Romeo and Juliet. He gives them a donation. It makes him ponder the profound power of literature, even the solace of faith, maybe. This feels like a moment of true, unadulterated goodness.
The warmth and authenticity of these brief, genuine connections with the nuns contrasts so sharply with Holden's pervasive cynicism and the often transactional, superficial nature of his other interactions.
It really stands out.
It does. It offers a fleeting but deeply significant hint of hope, suggesting that simple goodness, unburdened by artifice and genuine human connection, can still be found outside the phony world he hates. Historically, this nods to the strong religious influences still very prevalent and foundational in 1950s America, even as secular shifts were slowly beginning.
Religion was a bigger part of public life then.
Absolutely. Churches, synagogues, other religious institutions often served as vital community anchors, sources of moral guidance, places of comfort. For Holden, a moment of unadulterated kindness and shared intellectual curiosity with these nuns stands out precisely because it's so rare, so utterly unexpected in his jaded world. It's a moment of unexpected grace, a glimpse of a different kind of truth. The audiobook narration slows down here, adopting a softer, more reflective tone, allowing the listener to savor this quiet moment.
It's a lovely moment. Then, in Chapter 16, Nostalgia and the Preservation of Innocence, Holden is killing time before his date with Sally. He goes record shopping and buys a specific, kind of obscure record, Little Shirley Beans, a thoughtful gift for his beloved younger sister Phoebe.
Always thinking of Phoebe.
Always. Then he wanders through the Museum of Natural History, a place that significantly evokes this deep, almost visceral sense of childhood nostalgia and comfort for him. It's a place where things, unlike his own life, never seem to change.
The exhibits are always the same.
Exactly. The Esquivo, the Indians.
His profound fascination with the unchanging exhibits powerfully underscores his deep, almost desperate yearning to preserve innocence, to somehow resist the inevitable, often painful march of time and change. The museum's dioramas, frozen perfectly in time, represent a stable, predictable world where nothing ever alters. A stark, comforting contrast to his own tumultuous, unpredictable life and the constantly shifting, phony world outside.
It's like a safe harbor for him.
Absolutely. In an era of rapid progress and modernization in America, think the rise of commercial TV, the vast expansion of interstate highways, the aggressive push for nuclear power, widespread suburban development. Holden's intense desire to hold on to a static, idealized past represents a quiet but profound resistance to that relentless, often disorienting rush forward. The museum becomes a sacred sanctuary where he can imagine a world where nothing precious ever changes or gets phony. It's a powerful symbol of his wish to arrest time, keep things pure. The wistful quality in the audiobook narrator's voice when Holden describes the unchanging exhibits perfectly conveys this deep longing.
You feel that yearning. And then in Chapter 17, impulsive rebellion and crumbling romance, the much-anticipated date with Sally Hayes finally happens. And, well, almost as predicted, it goes south fast, in a truly dramatic fashion.
The date from hell, almost.
Pretty much. They see a play, go ice skating at Radio City. But things quickly sour when Holden launches into his wild, impulsive escape plan, this desperate fantasy to run away, go to Massachusetts or Vermont, live in a secluded cabin, chop his own wood, marry her eventually. Completely isolated from society.
Yeah, the log cabin fantasy.
It clashes dramatically and irrevocably with Sally's grounded practicality and her very conventional desires for their future. She just wants a normal life. It's a total implosion. He even calls her a royal pain in the ass.
Ouch. Yeah, this fiery emotional clash dramatically crumbles any romantic potential they might have had, exposes their fundamental, irreconcilable incompatibility. It's a classic example of impulsive youth overflowing with idealistic rebellion, directly challenging the established, rigid norms and expectations for romance, career, future planning that were so prevalent and enforced in the 1950s.
Dad wants out, she wants in.
Exactly. And it raises that important question again. How does Holden's impulsive, almost fantastical escape plan reflect the underlying anxieties and frustrations of young people feeling stifled by the rigid expectations of post-war society? Where life paths often seemed predetermined, deviations frowned upon.
Right, the pressure to follow the script.
Immense pressure. For many young Americans, the expectation was that linear progression, graduate, marry, buy a house in the suburbs, settle into a predictable, stable life. Holden's desperate fantasy of a secluded cabin is an extreme, albeit naive, rejection of that prescribed phony path, a raw desire for absolute freedom from societal constraints. It's the ultimate counter-narrative to the glossy, idealized American dream being tirelessly sold. The audiobook narrator's increasing agitation and rapid-fire delivery perfectly capture the escalating tension and inevitable implosion of this date.
You feel the whole thing just falling apart. Following that blow-up in Chapter 18, anti-war rants and senseless conflict, Holden is left stewing, feeling more alienated than ever. He retreats into his own thoughts, mulling over the absurdity and sheer senselessness of war. He thinks about his brother DB in the army and the draft. It's a recurring, deeply personal theme for him.
The shadow of war is always there.
He calls an old pal, Carl Luce, for drinks later, and in the meantime endures a boring movie at Radio City Music Hall, complete with the Rockettes and the religious Christmas pageant, which he finds incredibly phony, just aimlessly killing time, reflecting his deep inner turmoil.
Holden's intense, almost visceral anti-war rants in this chapter directly tie into Salinger's own profound veteran perspective on the senselessness and brutal futility of conflict. Salinger having personally witnessed the horrors and psychological devastation of WWII firsthand.
You saw some terrible things.
Terrible things. He pours that deep disillusionment into Holden's voice, making it resonate with authentic pain. This provides raw, unflinching commentary on the destruction, the moral compromises, the profound psychological scars inherent in war. A topic that deeply affected and silently haunted many Americans coming out of WWII and entering the psychological battlegrounds of the Cold War.
The constant threat was real.
Very real. The constant threat of nuclear annihilation, the recent memory of the Korean War, the general atmosphere of international tension. War was an ever-present, if often unspoken, anxiety beneath the surface of 1950s prosperity. Holden's rant isn't just a teenager being cynical or rebellious. It's a profound echo of a generation that had seen too much, questioning the very values that led to such devastation. He's reacting to the world's absurdity, its capacity for destruction, with almost primal disgust. The narrator's voice here takes on a sharper, more impassioned edge, conveying Holden's deep-seated anger.
You really hear Salinger's voice coming through there, too. Then in Chapter 19, social missteps and repressed discussions, Holden attempts another connection. He meets his former schoolmate, Carl Luce, who's older, seemingly more sophisticated, now a student at Columbia at the Wicker Bar.
Luce, the supposed intellectual.
Right. Holden, with his characteristic lack of filter, immediately starts prying into deeply personal and sexual topics, asking about Luz's sex life, his experiences with psychoanalysis, homosexuality.
Yeah, Holden goes right for the uncomfortable stuff.
He gets repeatedly and awkwardly shut down by Luz, who clearly wants no part of this conversation, finds it immature, and grows increasingly uncomfortable, eventually just leaving.
The extreme awkwardness and palpable discomfort of this conversation highlight Holden's persistent social missteps, his profound inability to connect authentically, especially with people who don't share his immediate, unfiltered desire for truth and raw honesty,
He just doesn't get social cues sometimes.
or chooses to ignore them. He's trying, in his own clumsy way, to cut through the phoniness, get to something real. But his approach is often invasive, inappropriate, entirely lacking in social graces. Crucially, in the context of 1950s America, this scene powerfully touches on those deeply repressed discussions around identity, sexuality, personal struggles, things largely taboo in polite society.
You just didn't talk about this stuff.
Exactly. Topics like non-normative sexual identity, emotional vulnerability, deep personal anxieties. They were closeted, hidden, often shamed. Carl Luz's discomfort, his polite yet firm attempts to redirect the conversation, perfectly illustrate the societal walls around such subjects. Holden's insistent probing, despite his underlying good intentions to get to real issues, clashes directly with the era's deeply ingrained social conservatism, the unspoken rules of acceptable conversation. He's searching for an authenticity that society itself repressed. The audiobook narrator perfectly captures the cringeworthy silences and the rising tension in this very uncomfortable exchange.
It is super cringy. And finally, Chapter 20, plunging into despair in the Pulla family, sees Holden truly hit rock bottom, emotionally spiraling after Luz leaves.
The lowest point, arguably.
Drunk and desperate, he makes a drunken call to Sally Hayes, apologizes incoherently that he aimlessly roams Central Park in the cold, trying to find the lagoon with the ducks. He accidentally shatters the record he bought for Phoebe, dropping it in an act of almost symbolic self-sabotage.
The gift is broken.
He grapples with intense, terrifying fears of death, of catching pneumonia and dying, of his own funeral. It's a moment of profound despair, before he finally, crucially, decides to head home. Drawn by the powerful, undeniable pull of his younger sister Phoebe's sake, he needs to see her.
This chapter depicts Holden plunging into his absolute deepest despair, hitting rock bottom emotionally, intellectually, physically. He is utterly lost, isolated, overwhelmed by the perceived phoniness, brutality, sheer meaninglessness of the world.
He feels completely alone.
Completely. However, the almost singular thought of his family, particularly his beloved younger sister Phoebe, acts as that powerful anchor, a lifeline that miraculously pulls him back from the abyss of suicidal ideation and complete emotional collapse.
Phoebe saves him, in a way.
In a very real way. And this mirrors the silent, pervasive mental health struggles many individuals faced in the post-war era, often without adequate support, understanding, or even a vocabulary to articulate their pain. The 1950s, for all its outward prosperity and optimism, was a time when admitting to depression, anxiety, any mental anguish was often seen as a weakness, a personal failing.
Right, the stigma was huge. Keep a stiff upper lip.
Exactly. Forcing people to suffer in silence behind closed doors. Holden's internal monologue, raw and utterly unfiltered, is a stark contrast to this societal norm, giving voice to a profound emotional pain that many felt but rarely articulated. His decision to go home to Phoebe is a powerful affirmation of the grounding, healing power of genuine, unconditional love, a purity he can still access. The audiobook narrator's voice shifts dramatically here, becoming heavy with despair, only to lighten slightly with a fragile hope as Phoebe enters Holden's thoughts.
It's a powerful shift. Wow. We've just explored the very depths of Holden's street-level odyssey through New York, and his emotional journey has been truly profound, hasn't it? Taking us through intense highs and desperate lows. If you're finding our exploration valuable, and we genuinely hope you are, please show your support by liking this episode, subscribing to Book Podcast Zone, and sharing it far and wide with anyone who appreciates literary analysis and exploring complex characters. Your engagement means the world to us and helps us continue bringing you these in-depth analyses.
Yes, please do. It keeps us going.
Now we come to Part 4, Phoebe, The Catcher Dream, and Redemption, covering chapters 21 through 25. This is where Holden's tumultuous journey takes a crucial turn, moving towards maybe a deeper understanding of himself and the world, offering a glimmer of hope for his future.
The home stretch, in a sense.
Chapter 21. Sibling love as an anchor marks a definite turning point. Holden successfully sneaks home, careful not to be caught by his parents who are out. He wakes Phoebe in her room, which was actually DB's room,
A reunion?
and she immediately, with this almost uncanny intuition, guesses he's been expelled again. She reacts with a mixture of upset, concern, and this deep sense of protectiveness for him. She even covers her head with a pillow. Their bond is immediate and palpable, cutting through all of Holden's usual defenses.
Amidst all the chaos, Holden's self-inflicted isolation, his constant, often harsh judgments, his bond with Phoebe shines through as arguably the purest, most genuine, and undeniably most vital relationship in the entire novel.
It really does.
Phoebe acts as Holden's emotional anchor, providing him with unconditional love, a much-needed dose of reality, and this unwavering belief in him that no other character offers. Her upset isn't just anger at his actions, it's born from a deep well of love and concern, and it cuts through Holden's defenses, his cynical exterior, in a way no adult lecture or parental word ever could.
She sees right through him.
Completely. In a world Holden perceives as teeming with phonies, populated by unreliable, hypocritical adults, Phoebe represents an uncorrupted, truthful connection that is utterly vital for his emotional and psychological well-being. She is, quite simply, his moral and emotional compass, pulling him back from the brink. The audiobook narrator's voice during their exchange perfectly captures the tender, honest, sometimes exasperated dynamic of their sibling relationship, makes their connection feel incredibly real.
It really does. And then the moment the book is named after, in chapter 22, The Catcher in the Rye and Protecting Innocence, Phoebe, with her sharp childlike insight, presses him. She challenges him about what he actually likes, what he wants to be, pushing him to articulate something positive, something he truly values, beyond just hating everything.
Yeah, she calls him out. You don't like anything that happens.
Exactly. This challenging question leads to his iconic dream, his fantasy of being the catcher in the rye. Standing at the edge of this crazy cliff, saving children from falling off while they play innocently in a field of rye nearby.
Not knowing where they're going.
Right. It symbolizes his desperate, almost quixotic desire to protect innocence from the perceived dangers, the fall, of the adult world. A chilling story he recounts just before this, about James Castle, a boy at a previous school who jumped out a window to his death rather than take back something he said. It adds this layer of gravity to his deep concern for vulnerability and the perilous transition from childhood to adulthood.
This is truly the titular vermin. Arguably the most significant revelation of Holden's core desire, the profound, almost messianic driving force behind his seemingly pervasive cynicism. His dream is a profound critique of adult corruption, the perceived existential dangers lurking within a seemingly prosperous conformist society.
He sees adulthood as a fall.
Pretty much. He sees children as pure, vulnerable, perpetually on the verge of falling into the abyss of the phony, corrupting adult world. His desperate, almost impossible need to preserve the purity of childhood from what he views as the inevitable corruption of adulthood. It's Holden's personal crusade, his ultimate calling.
It's a powerful image.
Incredibly powerful. And what's truly fascinating here, and what the audiobook narrator's almost reverent, solemn tone emphasizes, is how this dream reflects a universal yearning to protect vulnerability, especially in a world that often seems intent on crushing it with demands for conformity, hidden brutalities, its relentless pace. It raises that resonant question for us, the listeners. What are we trying to catch or protect in our own lives, our communities? What aspects of innocence, authenticity, genuine human connection do we see threatened by the phony elements of our modern world social media artifice, political posturing, relentless consumerism?
That's a great question.
Holden's dream, while naive in its literal interpretation, speaks to a deeply empathetic and protective spirit that resonates far beyond his teenage angst.
In chapter 23, A Tender Farewell and Hope on the Horizon, we witness this truly touching and pivotal moment in their sibling relationship. Holden and Phoebe are dancing slowly in the living room. Holden hides when his parents return, prolonging their precious time together.
A moment of connection.
Then, in this incredibly selfless act, Phoebe insists on giving him her entire Christmas savings, her dough, which is $8.65. An act of profound trust and generosity. It brings Holden to tears with gratitude. He can barely speak.
Yeah, that moment gets me every time.
The escape from New York seems imminent, as he plans to leave before his parents discover he's home. It blends this powerful sense of both joy at having seen her and sorrow at their parting.
This tender, tearful moment, underscored by the intimacy of their dance, showcases the profound depth of their sibling connection and the truly transformative impact Phoebe has on him. Her willingness to give him her precious savings, amassed through childish frugality, underscores her innocence and boundless generosity.
It's such a contrast to everyone else.
Such a stark contrast to the often transactional, self-serving, emotionally distant nature of many of Holden's adult interactions. For Holden, who has felt so isolated, misunderstood, betrayed by almost every adult, this pure act of unconditional love and trust from his sister is deeply, profoundly moving. It represents a glimmer of hope, a powerful, almost irresistible reason for him to confront his flight, rather than just escape. It's a pure, unadulterated moment of human connection that reaffirms the possibility of genuine bonds and unselfish love. The narrator's voice softens considerably here, conveying the profound warmth and vulnerability of Holden's emotion.
Just when we, and perhaps Holden, think he's found some footing, some real connection, Chapter 24, Twisting Mentorship and Trust Issues, delivers this dramatic, really unsettling blow.
The Antolini incident, yeah, very controversial.
Holden goes to stay the night at the apartment of his former English teacher from Elton Hills, Mr. Antolini, whom he respects. Antolini gives him seemingly deep, well-intentioned advice on life's pitfalls, the importance of education, warns him he's heading for a terrible fall, quoting Wilhelm Stuckel.
Seems like a genuine mentor figure initially.
But the situation dramatically flips. Holden wakes in the middle of the night on the couch to find Mr. Antolini sitting beside him, stroking his head. This sends Holden fleeing in panic, convinced of yet another betrayal, another instance of a seemingly good adult turning phony, or worse, dangerous.
This scene is profoundly unsettling and deliberately ambiguous because it takes the idea of mentorship, a guiding hand for youth, and twists it into one of suspicion, potential betrayal, powerfully mirroring the underlying trust issues and deep-seated anxieties prevalent in the era.
We don't know Antolini's real intention.
We don't. Was it a paternal gesture of comfort, maybe drunkenly misplaced, or something more sinister and inappropriate? It's left to interpretation. But Holden's immediate, panicked interpretation is crystal clear. It reinforces his deepest, most primal fear that even seemingly well-intentioned, intelligent adults can ultimately be phonies, or even worse, dangerous.
It confirms his worst fears about him.
Exactly. And connecting this to the bigger picture, this incident, regardless of its ambiguity, speaks volumes about the vulnerabilities young people face. The immense challenges of distinguishing genuine care from inappropriate or predatory behavior, especially in a time when such sensitive topics were absolutely not openly discussed, acknowledged, or given proper recognition.
The silence around it must have been deafening.
Leaving young people feeling confused, isolated, without recourse when faced with unsettling adult behaviors. It shatters yet another of Holden's fragile hopes for adult guidance and reaffirms his conviction that the adult world is irrevocably corrupt. The sharp intake of breath from the narrator in the audiobook when Holden recounts this scene perfectly captures his terror and revulsion.
It's deeply disturbing. And finally, Chapter 25, Redemption at the Carousel and Childlike Wonder. Holden is hiding out, initially planning to just sleep at Grand Central. He's once again spiraling back into a deep depression, feeling physically ill, having terrifying thoughts. He makes plans to flee west alone, pretend to be a deaf mute, disappear completely.
The final escape plan.
But Phoebe, having figured out his plan from a note he left for her, arrives at the museum where they agreed to meet. She's got her suitcase packed, determined not to be left behind, ready to go with him.
She calls his bluff, essentially.
Totally. This forces Holden to directly confront his actions, the profound impact they have on others, especially the one person he loves most purely. He refuses to take her, gets angry, makes her cry. Then, almost as penance, he takes her to the Central Park Zoo carousel nearby. As he watches her ride in the pouring rain, reaching with pure joy for the gold ring.
The brass ring, yeah.
It brings him this rare, genuine, purely unadulterated moment of joy. He feels so damn happy all of a sudden. A sense of belonging he hasn't felt in the entire novel. He decides not to run away after all.
This profound turnaround emphasizes that redemption for Holden is found not in grand gestures or elaborate escapes, but in simple pleasures, in moments of authentic connection, in the powerful, grounding influence of genuine, unconditional love from his sister.
It's a moment of grace.
It truly is. It's a crucial moment of healing for Holden. He embraces the present moment, the unadulterated childlike wonder reflected in Phoebe's joy. He watches her without judgment, allowing himself to simply be present, accepting. In 1950s terms, this scene subtly suggests a profound resistance to that relentless societal grind, the intense pressure to always be striving for material success, conforming to rigid norms.
Finding joy in the simple things.
Exactly, finding profound value in moments of pure, unadulterated joy, beauty, authenticity, rather than chasing a phony version of happiness. Think of enduring American experiences like a carousel ride. They symbolize a form of timeless innocence, a connection to a simpler, purer past, standing in stark contrast to the rapid social and technological changes of the mid-20th century. This pivotal moment for Holden is about acceptance, not escape. Finding joy and meaning in the now, in the presence of uncorrupted innocence. The subtle shift in the narrator's voice from despair to a quiet, almost reverent happiness as Holden watches Phoebe is incredibly powerful.
It really lands. Wow, what an emotional roller coaster, truly. We've navigated the intense highs and lows of Holden Caulfield's journey, from Pencey to that carousel, and it's been an incredibly rich deep dive. Before we hear Holden's final reflections in the last chapter, please remember to like this deep dive if you've enjoyed it, subscribe to Book Podcast Zone, and share it with anyone who appreciates nuanced literary analysis and exploring complex, unforgettable characters. Your support means the world to us and allows us to continue bringing you these in-depth explorations.
We really appreciate it.
Now for the outro and the very brief Chapter 26, Treatment and Lingering Questions. Holden wraps up his narrative quite abruptly. He reveals, rather elliptically, that he got sick and is now in a quiet recovery spot out west, which we understand to be some kind of mental health institution or rest home, reflecting the evolving, though still somewhat nascent, understanding and treatment of mental health in that era.
Yeah, the ending is quite ambiguous about the specifics.
Very. He mentions talking to a psychoanalyst, and he admits, somewhat surprisingly, to missing even some of the phonies he encountered on his journey. People like Stradlater, even Ackley. He says, don't ever tell anybody anything. If you do, you start missing everybody.
This brief, reflective fade-out leaves listeners pondering Holden's potential for growth and the deeply open-ended nature of his journey. It suggests that even the most cynical, the most judgmental among us can perhaps begin to find value in human connection, even with those they once scorned or dismissed as phonies.
It hints at some change, maybe.
It does, and it raises that incredibly important question for us. Is Holden truly on the path to healing and acceptance? Or is this just another pause in his long struggle, another temporary sanctuary before he rebels again? And what does it truly mean for him to miss even the phonies?
Yeah, what does that signify?
It suggests a burgeoning understanding of empathy, complexity. Perhaps a nascent acceptance that the world and the people in it aren't simply black and white. He's starting maybe to see shades of gray. To understand that even those he judged harshly have their own complexities, their own vulnerabilities, which is a significant and hopeful step forward from his earlier rigid judgments. It's not a tidy, neatly wrapped ending, but a deeply realistic and profoundly human one. The audiobook narrator's final words are delivered with a soft, contemplative tone, leaving the listener with a sense of quiet reflection rather than definitive closure.
Absolutely. So what does this all mean then? This tumultuous journey through Holden's mind, this deep dive into his world. Holden Caulfield's experience, his rant against the phony world, it's far more than just a rebellious teen being angry.
Much more.
It's a timeless exploration of profound alienation, the painful, awkward, often lonely process of growing up, and that constant, often frustrating search for authenticity in a world that often relentlessly demands conformity.
That search feels very current, too.
It does. His struggles, amplified by the rigid social norms and hidden anxieties of 1950s America, that immense pressure to achieve conventional success, the pervasive fear of communism and nonconformity, the stifling expectations for gender roles, they resonate profoundly with anyone who has ever felt like an outsider, struggled to find their authentic place, or wrestled with the perceived hypocrisy of society.
The outsider perspective is universal.
Exactly. This book reminds us that sometimes the most challenging, the most unfiltered, the most uncomfortable voices are the ones that force us to look most honestly at ourselves and the society we inhabit, prompting us to question what we truly value, what truly matters.
Stepping back to consider the broader implications, Holden initially sought to be the catcher in the rye, right? This grand protector, heroically saving others from falling into perceived corruption.
His big dream.
His big dream. But perhaps his journey ultimately reveals that the most profound act of catching isn't about physically stopping others from falling off the cliff, but maybe about catching oneself, finding a foothold in a complex, imperfect world, learning to live with its inherent imperfections, its phonies, and all.
Learning to navigate it. not just reject it.
Perhaps. Learning to stand on your own 2 feet, not necessarily to change the entire world, but to navigate it with some degree of peace, understanding, and self-acceptance. So consider this as you go about your day, in your own interactions, in your own life. What are the phonies you encounter? Whether it's, the superficiality of social media, insincere conversations, hollow advertising, performative gestures in your community.
They're everywhere, if you look.
And, maybe more importantly, what innocence or authenticity do you strive to protect, either in yourself, in your children, in the wider world around you? What is truly worth catching and holding on to in a world that constantly shifts and challenges us?
That's a fantastic thought to leave us with. Really powerful. Thank you for joining us on this incredibly insightful deep dive into The Catcher in the Rye. It's been a real privilege to explore this classic with you all.
It really has. We truly hope you gained valuable new perspectives and perhaps a renewed appreciation for Holden's enduring, complicated story.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep deep diving into the stories that shape us all.